Hello? Oh my gosh, everyone's quieting down. Scano. That is Cuga for hello. My name is Dr. Caitlin Davey. I am a mixed background Indigenous woman, so she, her pronouns. I am Haudenosaunee, Cuga Nation, Polish, and Scottish. My family is from Six Nations of the Grand River, as well as Caledonia, Ontario. And I'm going to be doing the opening today. I'm very honored to have been invited to do that. I know that we had another elder who was planned to come today, but something else has pulled her away. So I'm going to do my best to do our opening. So the opening I'm going to do is called a Thanksgiving address. So for Haudenosaunee people, we start our ceremonies and gatherings with the Thanksgiving address, and that's where we thank everything, all of creation. As you can imagine, that takes quite a while, and I think I have 4 minutes, so I will still thank as much as I can, but it will be a much briefer version. So I will get started. I'm going to do some of it in Cuga and some of it in English, so I just have to read off my phone here. So if you see me looking down, that's why. Dane da nigye gohode, aswa da o sio, I gawe dako. Awado ne he wa he to. Shogwayadiso sogwawi. Gonohonyok ne awisat. Scano duenoho donyo ne dine e duahek. Ihya scat adwe ye. Ogwani goha scat de duadat nohonyo. Ne tohye ne neo hodok. Ogwani goha. I also want to express thanks and that we are all thankful for the people, the earth mother, the waters, the fish, the plants, the food plants, the medicine herbs, the animals. To also express thanks for the trees, the birds, the four winds, the thunders, the sun, grandmother moon, the stars, the enlightened teachers, and of course, creator. Certainly it's not my intention to leave anything out. Certainly want to acknowledge all of creation and to also express that with this opening and words before all else, now our minds are one. Now, that's my opening, and we are also going to start a smudge ceremony and pass that around shortly. Just so you know, I want to, of course, invite everyone to participate. If you're not comfortable participating, that's okay. You can just say no thank you or just simply not participate. Certainly we don't want anybody feeling uncomfortable. If you do want to participate, you've never done that before, just so you know, a smudge ceremony, from what I've been taught anyway, is that it is a cleansing ceremony. And so what we usually do is once we light the sage, and that's what we have today, the medicine we have is sage. Once we light that, the smoke from the sage connects us to Creator, it connects us to the spirit world. And so we can use that smoke or embrace that smoke to cleanse ourselves. And usually we do that by cleansing all 5 senses. So, and you can, some people smudge their whole bodies. There's no right way. You can kind of do it any way that calls to you. And so you can smudge your eyes to see better, your ears to hear better, your nose even to smell better, your mouth to speak better, and your heart to feel better as well. And sometimes people also put it over their heads to think better and clear their minds. And it's just a nice way to start in a good way. Yahweh.
As Caitlin starts us out, I've just been asked to say a few words. Good afternoon. My name is Mike Heenan, and it's an honor to be here today. I'm the president of St. Joseph's Healthcare Hamilton. On behalf of the sisters and the Joint Board of Governors and Elizabeth Buller, the president of our St. Joseph's Health System, I just want to welcome and thank all of you for joining us on this special occasion. I also want to have a shout out to all of our partners who are watching virtually. We provide care right across southwestern Ontario, so Kitchener, Guelph, Waterloo, Cambridge, Dundas, Brantford, all the way to the Niagara River. And I want to thank our Indigenous community partners in particular for joining us today for this important event. We'll begin today. I'm going to say the land acknowledgement that St. Joe's has adopted, and then I'm going to share with you my journey of reconciliation. So we at St. Joe's recognize that the lands on which we provide care, learn, and conduct research are the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee peoples. For thousands of years, the first people sought to steward the precious resources and share this land with others. These territories are the subject of the Dish with One Soon Wappum Belt Covenant, an agreement between nations to peaceably share and care for the lands around the Great Lakes. At St. Joe's, we pledge to continue to walk together with Indigenous peoples in building a more just society with their gifts, and all of the people and those of all people are nurtured and honored. Some of you have heard my story of reconciliation and journey that continues. I'm going to share it again for those who haven't. But as a healthcare leader, I can tell you that in a previous organization, we were reviewing a critical incident adverse event case of a young Indigenous person. And through those learnings, became aware of the concept of medical bias based on clinical presentation, the concept of consent when consent is given or not given, and the concept of family and how to define family, and taking it from a very narrow view versus engaging that patient and their family on those three items. And so it was a real awakening to understand those three things that are inherent in our biases as healthcare providers. I also want to share with you that there are two fantastic leaders who I've recruited to our executive team over the last number of months who are here today, and I hope you recognize. I got a phone call one afternoon back in April, and they explained a similar situation here at West Fifth, in which I asked, "What keeps you up at night?" And these two leaders said, "It's going to happen again unless we make change." And so today's event and the sponsorship of BMO is a result of their courage today. So I thank Randy McCabe and Brooke Howell for having the courage to speak that we don't know what we know, but we know we're going to make a mistake unless we learn. And so I'm so pleased that they're a member of our executive team. So I hope you acknowledge them as you see them here today. September 30th is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation at St. Joe's. We understand the importance of pausing on this day to commemorate, honor, and reflect on the deeply painful legacy of residential schools and the ongoing trauma and harm it continues to cause. We are committed to doing the work that is necessary to honor those affected by residential schools and continue to build trust with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples and communities. At St. Joe's, we are committed to living our values of dignity, respect, service, justice, and responsibility. This means continuing on our path to do better and to take action so Indigenous peoples feel safe and supported when working, volunteering, learning, and receiving care at our hospital and all of our care centers. Today, we are pleased to be joined by our partners at the St. Joe's Foundation and members from BMO, who will be making an announcement that will support our actions toward truth and reconciliation and improve access to culturally sensitive services and care for Indigenous peoples. We will also hear from members of our team who will share more about Indigenous health services at our hospitals and the steps we are taking along our journey. Lastly, we will be honored to welcome Tom Wilson, a Canadian musician, author, and artist who will share the story of discovering the truths about his biological family and Indigenous heritage. I want to thank Dr. Caitlin Davey for opening us up, and thank you for joining us today. I'll ask Samia to now.
Thank you, Mike. I should start by thanking the AV team. We finally have a mic to my size. We had taken this up for you, Tom, but we had to bring it back down for me. So this is great. Good morning, welcome. Thank you for that, Mike. Before I get into talking about our plans, which is what I'm here to talk to you about, I want to focus on a word that is critical to us and how we view our journey towards truth and reconciliation at St. Joe's. And that word is intent. We at St. Joe's are trying to listen with intent. We are trying to learn with intent. We are trying to action with intent. And we are trying to reflect with intent. And Mike's land acknowledgement today is one of the ways in which we are getting, be it our leadership, be it our staff, to be thoughtful about how we are reflecting, whether it's a land acknowledgement, whether it is listening, or whether we are actioning. So if there is one takeaway, because everybody is going to be focused on Tom today, is think about the intent and the work we are doing with intention. And so with intent, we are on this journey, and we are quite early on it. And with humility, I say we are quite at the beginning of this journey. We are learning. By no means it is perfect. We are going to make mistakes, and we are open to learning and growing on this journey. But days like today are an important milestone on that journey. And so we are here to acknowledge that and talk about where we are. I need to find the pickup. So I'm going to begin with what you see on the screen right now is our own land acknowledgement. And this is on the cover of the land acknowledgement. And I want you to take a moment to look at it, and I'll read it for you very quickly. It says, if we think of territorial acknowledgement as sites of potential disruption, they can be transformative acts that to some extent undo indigenous erasure. I believe this is true as long as these acknowledgements discomfort both those speaking and hearing the words. The fact of indigenous presence should force non-indigenous peoples to confront their own place on these lands. Moving beyond territorial acknowledgements mean asking hard questions about what needs to be done once we are aware of indigenous presence. It requires that we remain uncomfortable, and it means making concrete and disruptive change. This is a quote by Chelsea Wowell, and this is on the top of our own land acknowledgement. These are the 3 guides that we have used as inspiration for the work we are doing around our own land acknowledgement. And Lisa Jeffs, who you will hear from later, who's our senior consultant EDI, has worked very hard to teach us more about how to do reflective land acknowledgements. I talked about listening and learning, and very quickly I'm going to talk about some ways in which we are listening and learning. We are listening by fostering psychologically safer spaces for feedback and action. We have done listening tours with our staff. We are partnering with Indigenous Patient Navigator for enhancing our patient experience with feedback. We are partnering with Patient Family Advisory Council for improvements. We are supporting Indigenous staff experiencing anti-Indigenous racism. This is just the start, some ways in which we are doing it. How are we learning? The learning journey is very personal. We all know that, and people learn in different ways. We acknowledge that, whether it is e-learnings, whether it is having town halls on focusing on psychologically safer spaces. We have one next week. Please join us for that. Or bringing forward stories of lived experiences from patient, family, staff experiences for improvement, or doing Indigenous cultural safety training. We are looking forward to providing resources and different learning paths for all of us to learn and grow in this journey. Here are just some very quick examples of the work we have done in the last 2 years. There are many firsts on here. Our smudging ceremony, for instance, today is a first for us, and it's a big one for us. It was just in June 2023 that the first time we recognized Indigenous Peoples History Month. We've raised the survivors flag in lead up to the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And this event is also a part of our journey. So it's about intention and reflection, but it's also about action. Very quickly, what are we doing about actioning things? I'm not going to go through all of this, but in a nutshell, we have an Indigenous Health Working Group, which came together in 2022. We have regular meetings, and the goal is to coordinate all our efforts on this journey towards truth and reconciliation and how we can impact change thoughtfully and meaningfully. With the support of St. Joe's Foundation, 2 members of this group wrote a funding proposal for new services in 2023, and we are using feedback from our Indigenous community, staff, reports for finding recommended actions for us as a hospital. There is a list of actions here. Again, I'm not going to read all of it, but be it hiring Indigenous staff to lead the work, be it establishing an Indigenous Reconciliation Council, or developing an Indigenous cultural safety training, or establishing mechanisms to support our Indigenous staff, physician learners, and volunteers. There are several steps we are taking based on the actions we have been given. One of these steps is the SANYAS Anti-Racism Indigenous Training Program. And I want to say that, as I mentioned, there are different learning paths for all of us. And this is just one of many paths, one of many trainings, which serves to be a foundational course and bring people together to find common ground. We are hoping that the next step will be finding training where we can learn from local Indigenous trainers and local Indigenous communities. I want to be very clear about that. This is one way, it's foundational. There are more trainings to come, and there are more ways to learn. In fact, we take our training so seriously that we are holding ourselves publicly accountable, and we will be reporting to Ontario Health on how we are doing this training. We are starting with our leaders, and then we will be taking it forward. Finally, here are some other recommended actions that you can see on the screen, whether it is moving forward with the TRC calls to action, strengthening our relationships with local Indigenous leaders, data governance agreements, work with academic departments, Indigenous Health Learning Lodge at McMaster University to support learning and research environments, increasing Indigenous patient navigation, or resources for prioritizing Indigenous wellness pathway. These are just some ways in we are actioning our intent to have impact. So that's me. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Lisa, who's a senior consultant EDI and who's done a great job of organizing this event today. So over to Lisa.
Thanks, Soumya. So yes, I'm Lisa Jeffs. Use any pronoun. I'm a senior EDI consultant at St. Joe's. Is that not on?
Oh, okay, now it's on.
You're tall enough, you can stand.
I'm tall enough, yeah. Let's not talk about height. So thank you so much for coming today. It's a really exciting day. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I do want to tell you some really great news about St. Joe's moving forward on building an Indigenous health team as part of our hospital. As Soumya mentioned, we've done a lot of work listening to communities, to staff, to patients. We've done consultations. We've actually had a lot of history of consultations with Indigenous community, primarily through Caitlin's work. Caitlin has been critically important to helping us learn how to listen better. And so we've taken all of this information that we've pulled together from people that we've been listening to, from both national and local reports on how we can be doing better. And we've talked as well to other hospitals across the province that are engaging in this kind of work. And so we also took the list that Soumya showed you earlier. I know it's a long list and it's hard to read through it in the middle of a presentation, but lots of recommendations about things that we can do. And how are we going to do it is the important piece. So I'm here to tell you about the how. So Caitlin and I were brainstorming, and a lot of this has to do with Caitlin. And so I just want to make sure that you all know how much she has done to help us move forward. We were brainstorming and we realized, based on everything we heard, we need a team. We can't just have one person lead this work. It needs to be more than one. So thanks to Mike and the executive leadership team, we have the ability to hire a director and lead of Indigenous health. So I'm sorry this is a busy slide, but I wanted to make sure that you could see how interconnected this team is going to be. So the director of Indigenous health is at the top and at the beginning, and they will report in to the VP of clinical services within the hospital. And they will also connect to community. So if you look along the bottom in those bluish circles, you'll see all the different connections that they're going to have to different Indigenous networks and existing programs. So the Circle of Beads is a very well-known group of Indigenous community leaders and agencies that's pulled together to offer advice to mainstream and non-Indigenous organizations about how to do this work. So we've connected with them, and they've committed to helping us choose the right person for this role. They're going to be part of the recruitment process, on the hiring committee, helping spread the word. So we're very lucky and grateful that they have kindly agreed to support us through this, because they see the importance of the work and they want to help build relationship. The other organizations that will be involved are the McMaster Indigenous Mental Health Working Group. There's an Indigenous health circle that the city has started that this person will connect to, as well as Samia mentioned earlier, the Indigenous Health Learning Lodge at McMaster. Internally, this person will lead the team, and the team will include an Indigenous health advisor that will be a 3-year position. And without the support of BMO, we would not be able to have this role. So we'll hear a little bit more about that next. We'll also have an Indigenous mental health clinician that will be working closely with Caitlin to provide culturally safe mental health and addiction support for Indigenous people. We'll also integrate Indigenous ways of healing and Indigenous wellness models into the work that they do. And we'll also have 2 Indigenous peer support staff connected. So you'll see each role is connected up with those dotted lines to existing structures within St. Joe's, and then also connected to each other through the Director of Indigenous Health. And we know that that's critically important to be embedded in the system, but also in some ways separate from it and supporting each other. And they will all connect also with our Truth and Reconciliation Action Council that will be formed shortly after we hire our director, as well as our existing EDI Council and Professional Practice Advisory Council. So there's a lot on that slide, but there's a lot of thought that went into it to make sure that we have a really good starting place for this team to be successful in its work. So now Caitlin's going to talk to you about the mental health program that she's been leading for the last year.
Okay, oh, is this on? Can people hear me? No, okay. Or is this the one? Yes, okay. Thank you, Lisa. So I'm just gonna provide a bit of history and information just about this pathway so everyone's aware. So some of the history here, this really began during the COVID-19 pandemic, really through a particular Indigenous community request actually for a survey, because they wanted to understand more so how community members were doing, what resources were needed. And so this actually came up at the Indigenous Mental Health Working Group. And so we did that, and the outcome of the survey was pretty clearly that more resources were needed and more support, especially during this time, as you can imagine, of COVID-19. So what we started doing is prioritizing those from this particular Indigenous community through the outpatient mental health and addiction program. And then there was a request from other Indigenous communities and community organizations to expand this resource to include anyone who identified as Indigenous, not just people from that particular community. And so, of course, we wanted to respond to this request. And so what we started with, before just kind of expanding, we wanted to do this in a good way, and we also wanted to do this in a way that was community informed as much as possible. So we collected feedback from Indigenous community organizations and members within the region, the Hamilton region and reserves as well, about whether they would want something like this and what it should look like exactly. So some of the feedback, there was a lot of feedback, but just to provide some kind of high-level points here, they wanted the prioritization pathway, and they also wanted an Indigenous-specific stream or center, and having choice for community members about which one they wanted to access, or maybe both. The prioritization stream is certainly the one I'm talking about today, but the Indigenous-specific stream or center, perhaps that's in the future as well. People did talk about not feeling safe coming to St. Joe's due to anti-Indigenous racism, systemic racism and discrimination, and so that was certainly a theme. They also talked about wanting St. Joe's to make more of an effort in relationship building and collaboration between the hospital and the communities and community organizations. Of course, so much more, like I mentioned. So we began with getting managers on board to support prioritization, and clients would be streamlined through clinics. It didn't work as well as we had hoped the first go around. Certainly not because of managers. Managers were great, very responsive, very supportive of all of the work, but we just realized that we needed to have designated clinicians. And so that was really the second iteration of the pathway. So the current state, we now have designated clinicians. So we have psychologists and social workers with expertise in psychotherapy and at least some cultural safety training. And I specifically asked them to join the team. In addition to their current work, many of them accepted, and lots of support from their managers and directors. So that was great. And we've got a list of clinicians where they're from, who has committed to this work and committed to prioritizing Indigenous folks through this pathway. Clients can be seen individually or through group. And there is a designated intake clinician from Connect, which is incredibly helpful to meet them at the front door, and having that culturally safe person is so important. And then we have intake, discharge, and client satisfaction questionnaires to really evaluate our work and see how we're doing. And then, of course, we do need to go back to communities and keep consulting and getting feedback about how we're doing, how this is going, or if there's something that needs to change. Oh, sorry, I forgot to say one other thing. It's also important that we consider additional resources, right? Which is, I think, what we're, talking about today as well, because all of the clinicians are taking this on top of their regular work, right? You can imagine on top of the regular workload, how much more this can be for people, or for staff, right? So we're doing our best and we are prioritizing people, but definitely need more resources, more support as always. So that's a bit about the pathway, and just want to say, Miawe, thank you for listening.
Before you run away, we also need to say thank you to you
Oh.
for everything that you've done. Without you, none of this would have been possible.
Oh my
So
goodness.
Thank you so much.
Just been thrown into the role of MC. We're the next person who's going to join us is Cleo Straham, who is the head of Indigenous banking for BMO. So please give a warm welcome to Cleo.
Thank you so much. So first, I just want to say Nyawe to Dr. Davey. Thank you so much for the opening and your smudge, and just starting this meeting in a really good way, and for all of your work. So Nyawe. And also thank you to Dr. Heenan for that land acknowledgement, and for just sharing a little bit about you personally. So thank you. Hi everybody, my name is Cleo Strorum. I'm head of the Indigenous Banking Unit at BMO. I'm a member of Fond du Lac First Nation in northern Saskatchewan, and I'm also a mom of 2 little ones back home. And it's really just such an honor to be here alongside so many partners who share in BMO's commitments to advance health, healing, and reconciliation with Indigenous communities. Since 2017, BMO has made over $10 million in commitments towards Indigenous health. Oh, thank you. Towards Indigenous health, with a priority to continuously expand support. For me personally, being here today is it comes from a personal story of my own, from my family, who does definitely have a history of mental health and addiction struggles, as many of us do. And I really do have a very strong belief in the importance of supporting people as much as possible through the most difficult and trying times. And I do believe that, Indigenous culture is grounded in a belief that we are all connected. And so, when one person struggles, we all struggle. We all feel the pain and the hurt. And mental illness does touch us all. I think, many of us here, we've experienced it firsthand or through loved ones, and the challenges that come with accessing and navigating healthcare to address these issues and these challenges. And for Indigenous people, this journey can be especially complex. Navigating the stigma on top of a system that really just wasn't built, with our traditions in mind, our ways of healing, or our history. And it can be really daunting to get that care that's needed, and not only physically, but also emotionally and spiritually and everything else. You talk about COVID-19. My mom did, in fact, pass away from COVID-19 in a hospital. She was away from her family. She was away from us and her friends, and she was away from her community, and she was afraid. She was afraid and alone at the time, but also really expressed her lack of trust in, like, the Western medical institutions, and that was based on her own experiences, and that was based on the experience of others. And it's like in a time like that I think we all just really want to feel as safe and as confident and as cared for as possible. So it's really important. And that's why I think the work that we're doing, supporting here, just means so much, and to me as well. Indigenous communities have been integral to the development of Canada, but have really faced long-standing systemic discrimination, and the impact of this legacy just really calls on all of us to do more. So today, I'm very honored and very grateful that I get to announce that BMO is contributing over $550,000 over 3 years to improve culturally sensitive healthcare services for Indigenous peoples here at St. Joe's through the Indigenous Pathway Program. It is really great. We all know that true healing requires more than just medicine. It requires an understanding of the entire person, their history, their culture, and their spirit. And this is what culturally sensitive care, I think, embodies. It recognizes the traditional healing practices, language, and community, and these are all central to our journey to wellness. This initiative is a very powerful step towards reconciliation, helping to reduce disparities, cultivate intergenerational wellness, and promote and maintain a two-sided relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous systems. But there's still more work to be done, and every step matters. And we at BMO understand the importance of inclusion within the communities that we serve. And I do want to mention that you talked a lot about, Indigenous cultural training, and you talked about all of the other many opportunities there are for that. But at BMO, we also have a course called Nishtatamun, and it's an e-learning course that talks about Indigenous history and culture, and I think this is very important. It's for all of our employees to complete. When they first join the bank, it's mandatory, and we encourage them to continuously take it annually. And it is also available publicly, so anybody can take that course. And it takes roughly 45 minutes, which is not enough time to learn everything that you need to learn, but you can fit it in a workday. So again, I just want to end by saying thank you so much to the team at St. Joe's for your dedication, and to everyone here for supporting this important work. And together we are really, I think, making a difference, which is good. And the circle of care is one of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, which can only flourish through self-determination. And as we move forward, we need to listen and learn from the lived experience of First Nations people, Inuit and Métis people in Canada, and continue to identify and remove the barriers for Indigenous people. So that's it for me. Thank you. Jimmy Quitch.
Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Felice, President of St. Joseph's Healthcare Foundation. And on behalf of our hospital, our foundation, and the patients our care teams are honored to serve, allow me to share a few words of appreciation. Thank you, Cleo, to you, to your colleagues, and to the BMO organization for this very generous gift to our hospital. This remarkable gift of $550,000 is the first and indeed the largest charitable gift we have received to date to support St. Joe's commitment to taking meaningful actions towards greater truth and reconciliation. With BMO's support and paired with our hospital's own investment, St. Joe's is building an Indigenous health team focused on helping our hospital to ensure the care we are providing is inclusive, culturally safe, free from harm, and accepting of traditional healing too. This gift is not only about funding 2 essential roles as part of the Indigenous health team over the next 3 years, it is expanding the way we view our responsibility as a healthcare provider, aligning our focus on reducing disparities in access to care, and aiming to improve health outcomes for our Indigenous patients and clients. And as you heard from Cleo, this kind of work is not new to BMO. Over the past few years, BMO has been making gifts just like this one to support Indigenous causes across the country. So while we are so very grateful for your financial support, we are equally as grateful for your leadership in making meaningful investments to fuel our collective journey towards greater truth and reconciliation. So thank you, and we have a small gift as a token of our appreciation as well. If you might come up, Cleo. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And now I'd like to invite Mike Heenan, who back to the podium to introduce us to another very special guest.
So I don't know much about our next guest, is what I'm going to tell you. But I'm looking forward to it. I hear he's quite shy. But I have learned one thing in my life. A lot of people know me as the data guy. But I remember Brené Brown once saying, storytelling is data with a soul. And so you don't learn people and cultures and all the things that Cleo and Caitlin have talked to us about without understanding art. And so I'm really looking forward to learning from Tom Wilson today. So without further ado, please welcome Canadian artist Tom Wilson.
Nice to meet you. I have like a bit of, I lecture a lot and talk about things that people like to hear about mostly, and sometimes things that people don't want to talk about. But being here on this day, BMO, I'm old enough to remember BMO as the Bank of Montreal. It's actually very meaningful to me. And this initiative is very meaningful to me. I was born June 9th, 1959 at the old St. Joe's Hospital. My mother was an 18-year-old Mohawk girl who came from Ganawage to deliver me. And she wasn't considered, she wasn't respected. And being a woman in 1959 had to be a different story. Being an Indigenous girl in 1959 had to be a completely other story. When I was born, my mother knows I was born at 8:10 because she looked up at the clock. They took me, I was delivered and they took me from me and they wrapped me up in a blanket and they took me out of the room. My mother didn't get to see me. She didn't get to hold me. We didn't have that moment of bonding. She was put into a room by herself where she says to this day, all I wanted was to hold my baby. So she was able to get out of the room and walk the hallways of St. Joseph's Hospital and look through the nursery glass at all the babies that were in there, wondering which baby was hers. Didn't know if I was a boy or if I was a girl. A couple days later, she signed some papers without knowing what she had signed. She had signed me away to Catholics Children's Aid. We're reunited. We've known each other all our lives, but we've been reunited as mother and son only 10 years ago. So this is very meaningful, and thank you for this contribution. That's how I unofficially start this. My name is Thomas George Lazar. Dale Hahage, 2 roads. I come from a family of Mohawk chiefs, peacemakers and peacekeepers, warriors and man-eaters, lacrosse magicians, tobacco salesmen, gangsters, shamans, shit disturbers, and survivors. But instead of growing up around these heroes, I grew up on the East Mountain of Hamilton, Ontario, where a whole other tribe of madness prevailed. I'm a living, breathing lie, an embarrassment, a married man's mistake, and a young girl's only chance to hop a fence out of town and escape to freedom. The truth rob me of my golden heart. The lights are low, did you leave town? Can I come back? Can I get low down? I always told the truth, but for you I'd lie. I can't own you, but I'd love to try. How does it feel to be lying by yourself? You're out on your deal. Tell me, how does it feel? The truth is a constant seeker, a warrior with the tenacity of a traveling salesman knocking on every door, trying to make its heavy-hearted delivery to exactly the right person. When I was small, the truth was whispered around my kitchen table as I peered out between the bars of my wooden playpen, staring at the shadows of my ancestors, sitting in the dull glare of Bakelite lamps. The truth disguised itself to me. Sometimes I imagined it was an alien landing saucers in my backyard outside my bedroom window. And once, after I got my tonsils out, the truth appeared to me in chloroform hallucinations. Druggy, dreamy, lost information that bobbed and weaved and staggered its way to my bedside like a drunken father on his way home from the bars. Would you put some sugar where they put salt? The mistakes you made on all your faults. Let me seal your scars and ease your mind. Turn your deep blue heart into the loving kind. How does it feel to be lying by yourself? You're out or you deal. Tell me, how does it feel? For years after, the truth strangled me with its own details, made me question myself, attempt to shut out love, drove me to countless attempts at self-destruction. The truth left me paralyzed and gasping for breath, struggling to free my voice from deep inside my guts in the middle of the night while I was sleeping. And I tricked myself into believing that I hunted down the truth. But the truth found me. It wasn't the harmless, lily white, correct thing to do that we're all taught in grade school. And there was no immediate rewards from it. The truth is nothing but a bastard like me. You've been crying about the same things every night. Are you out of love? Have you lost your fight? There's no easy way to pick up the slack. You're too young to lose and too old to get back. How does it feel to be lying by yourself? You're out on your deal. Tell me, how does it feel? Thank you. 10 years ago, actually 10 years ago, believe it or not, this week I was going out on a speaking tour out west. I do speaking lectures about creativity and the economics of surviving as an artist. Oh, and a brand new microphone. How's that? But the same as the last one. I don't know. I'm going to just stop right there. I don't know if there's compression on my voice right now, but if you could take the compression off. Compression is for professionals. I'm only semi-professional, so please get rid of that. 10 years ago, I'm going out on a speaking tour, going out west. I show up at universities and colleges and in corporations, and people look at me a lot like you're looking at me, like, who's this guy that looks like he slept in his car last night? And I do this when I'm asked to do it, they sent a limousine. It was out in front of my house. There was a woman in the back seat of the car. Well, she was my handler. She basically gets me around to these things. I'd never met her before, but I got in the back of the car 10 years ago. I can't believe it. And she said, "Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm a fan of yours. And you don't know this, but your family and my family used to be friends." And I said, "Well, I hear that a lot, but Bunny and George Wilson, who raised me, they were really old. George Wilson was blinded in the Second World War. He was a tail gunner in a Lancaster bomber. For those that don't know what that means, the tail gunner position in Lancaster and Halifax bombers was known as the suicide seat in the Second World War. Most of the young boys that sat in that seat didn't make it home. George Wilson did make it home with a massive head injury, a steel plate in his head, totally blind, and a morphine addiction that melted down into dependency and alcohol. Nobody really came into her house. And I explained all that to her. And she goes, "Oh, no, no. My grandmother was friends with Bunny Wilson. Her name was Mary Brennan." And I remembered that name, Mary Brennan. It was like an eternity since I had even thought about this woman, but I remembered her grandmother. I said, "I remember your grandmother. That's so great." And I didn't think that Bunny Wilson had any friends in Hamilton, but this is really great news. My heart broke open for Bunny because now I remember this friend that she had. And she goes, "Yes, in fact, my grandmother was so close with Bunny Wilson that she was there the day you were adopted." And I said, "What?" That started this journey that I'm on right now. A couple weeks later, in fact, I was asked to be on a radio show at CBC called Definitely Not the Opera. It's a cute little storytelling show. And I went in to do that. And they don't tell you what the topic is. You just take the cue and you have to run with it. And the host is Suki and Lee. And I sit in the CBC studios on Front Street. Says, "Welcome to Definitely Not the Opera. I'm Suki and Lee. This week we have Tom Wilson on our show. And the theme, Tom, you have to speak about is you meet a complete stranger and they change your life." So I told this story in much greater detail. And I couldn't believe what I was doing. I was telling what essentially was a family secret, an Indigenous story, something that had been kept from me my entire life. And when I finished telling the story, I couldn't believe what I had done. I had told the story to millions of people. Well, wait a minute, CBC, hundreds of people across the country. And I went out in front of the CBC building right beside the Glenn Gould statue. I had an anxiety attack. I gathered myself and I got on the bus back to Hamilton and that was that. And a week later, I got a call from somebody. "Hello, is this Tom Wilson?" "Yes, it is." "This is Scott Sellers from Penguin Random House Books. We heard you on CBC last week. Have you ever thought about writing a book, Tom?" I said, "Fuck no, that sounds like way too much work." They said, "Well, will you come in for a meeting?" I said, "Of course, I'm a musician. I don't do anything all day." So I went in for this meeting at Penguin Random House and I go and it's all these beautiful glass and all these Penguin classics, and I'm dyslexic, so I haven't read any of them, but so I feel completely out of place, and I got my winter coat on. It's like February. I get in there, and receptionist says, "Mr. Wilson, they're waiting for you in the boardroom." And I said, "Yes, of course, they're waiting for me in the boardroom." So I went down to the boardroom in my big winter coat, and I'm sitting at this boardroom with all these very finely dressed people, a lot like yourselves, more like the BMO people, really quite dressed quite well. And what they've done is they've prepared a carafe of coffee and a pyramid of donuts. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm drinking the coffee and I'm eating the donuts and I'm talking and I'm getting sweatier, and my sugar and the caffeine has got me really erratic, way more than I am right now. And all of a sudden it's 12:30. I have talked for 2.5 hours straight. And they say to me, "We've never met anyone like you before. Would you like to write a book for Penguin Random House?" So now I can introduce myself as Tom Wilson, author. Thank you. I wrote one book, became a bestseller, it became a movie, and it became a musical that is opened in Hamilton in May and is moving to the NAC next year, and on through all the theaters. But after I found out about this discovery, I got asked a lot. So, Tom, how does it feel to be an Indian? I lived for 54 years. I'm 64 years old. 54 years thinking I was a big, puffy, sweaty Irish guy. Now here I am, a Mohawk guy. How does it feel to be an Indian, Tom? I wasn't offended by that because I was asking myself the same question. Because my identity had been taken from me. I didn't know what blood was running through me. It's a very tough situation to be in. I come from 5 generations of iron workers, skywalkers. Those are the guys that have built North America into the air, into the sky. All those buildings in Pittsburgh, New York, Chicago, Detroit, built by Mohawk guys. In fact, my sister's great-grandfather, I walked into her house for the first time and she had a statue. You know that famous statue of the guy sitting, eating their lunch, building Rockefeller Center? I said, "Oh, wow, man, that's a beautiful statue. That's really cool that you have that." She goes, Yeah. Third guy in. That's my great-grandfather, Joe Jock. A bunch of those guys in that photograph are from Ganawage. They're iron workers. I get nervous getting on a step stool to change a light bulb, and these guys were swinging from 50 stories high. On 9/11, my great uncle, Walter, was sitting watching his TV. He was the guy in the family that was a part of the crew that built the World Trade Centers. In fact, he was one of the handful of guys that hoisted the antennas up into the air on top of the World Trade Center. It was always known in the family, before I showed up, of course, as Uncle Walter's antenna. He watched those buildings crumble to the ground. He was crying. He was watching his antennas crumble to the ground and all those people dying. He built that. That was his life. So, Tom, how does it feel to be an Indian? My brother, who was an iron worker in New York during 9/11, a bunch of the guys from Ganawage, they got off the job. They went straight down to ground zero because they knew that if they were the guys that could put these buildings together, they were also the guys that could tear the rubble apart so that the firefighters could get in and do their job. And so that's what he did. He went into ground zero for weeks and weeks, taking this place apart, working in these bowels of hell. And as he was going through the wreckage, he came across what he thought was a rocket ship lying sideways in the debris, and he was staring at this, and he realized after looking at it for a few minutes that he was staring at Uncle Walter's antenna. When he took a break from the action, went back to Ganawage, cleansed himself with tobacco water because he knew he was carrying the souls of those people inside him. So, Tom, how does it feel to be an Indian? During the Oka crisis, 1991, I was sitting at home. I had just bought my first house down in Barnesdale. And I was listening to Knowlton Nash talk about the Oka crisis on the national news, and listening to it on CFRB and reading about it in the Globe and Mail. And my blood was boiling and I didn't know why. The same time that I was sitting in my home in Hamilton on Barnesdale Boulevard, my 2 brothers, Christopher and Kyle, were filling out their wills at their kitchen tables and taking weapons out into the woods to fight a war that they didn't think they were coming home from. So, Tom, how does it feel to be an Indian? I can't get there the same way my blood has. I have to create myself just like I've always created myself. So through the books that I write, through the music that I make, through the films that I make, the plays that I write, and the art that I create, that is how I get there, by putting the Mohawk culture into the light. 2 residential school exhibits have been sent out across the country, Queen's University, Stratford. I created 9 desks with the pictures of families on top of them. And as you go further deeper into the desks, the pictures start to disappear. I included my great-grandfather, Chief Peter Lazar, in that. That's one of the things that I did artistically to start making a point, to start making people aware. And that's my job now through my art. But I know that that's not enough. So I had to take action in other ways. And I'm not asking for you to pin a heart on me. I'm just saying that we all have a job in this to make this a better place to live. I created the first Indigenous scholarship at McMaster University in the name of Bunny Wilson, the woman who raised me. I just got $10,000 from Birkenstock yesterday. I got another $10,000 from the Slate Foundation. Oh, hello, BMO. How are you today? I did that because every Indigenous child that graduates from university as an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer is a win against colonialism. It's an important role. It's an important role. So action is what I'm trying to take besides the art. You know, I was listening to the defunct now CHML radio about 3 or 4 years ago. They said that I don't know if it was the mayor or somebody was on the radio saying that Caledonia had been taken over by terrorists. Wondered what that was about. Down on 1492 Landback Lane, they called it. A bunch of Mohawks moved in there and stopped the construction of a little satellite city. They did that because during the War of 1812, the Mohawks fought for the British. And to give thanks to the Mohawks, the British government gave them miles each side of the Grand River to live their lives in freedom, love, prosper, bring their families up. Since that time, those miles each side of the Grand River have become Caledonia and Cayuga and Paris and Brantford and on and on and on. So the Mohawks said, not another inch. Now, I'm Mohawk and I'm getting too old to fight. So I figured I went over to my Fortinos over on Dundurn and I picked up 30 or 40 of those delicious roasted chickens. We all know what they're like. They're incredible. And a bunch of canned goods and pies and vegetables. And I drove them out to 1492 Landback Lane to see the terrorists. When I delivered the food, they were very thankful. They were already cooking on open fires. People were having ceremonies. Kids were in a field playing lacrosse. These are the terrorists that we were told about on CHML radio. I went back home. Actually, I played a couple songs for them too. And then I went back home, and about a week later, I got a knock at my door. I opened the door. It was 2 OPP officers. And I looked at them, and I knew what they were there for. But the first thing that came to mind is that I've always wanted to use this line. It's like decades old. I saw it on Seinfeld. Newman answers the door, and I always wanted to say these words that Newman said. And so when the cops were standing there, I leaned against the frame of the door, and I said, "What took you?" I didn't think it was so funny. So they arrested me, and because of whatever minor fame or whatever I have, it became a national story, and 1492 Landback Lane became a little bit more a part of our vocabulary, especially in this neighborhood. And that's a movement of land back. I actually do have a land acknowledgement that is very short, and I'll say it to you now. Give it back. And if you can't give it back, then please take it out of the hands of corporations, no offense, and banks and people that want to destroy it and rape it. Because the people that are living on that land have been there for maybe about 20,000 years. So let's allow the land keepers to take care of the land for us, because we are not talking about the greed of corporations. We're talking about 7 generations. We're talking about generations that none of us are going to know. We have to take care of them. That's what I have been taught. One of the first things I was taught in Haudenosaunee was we have to take care of the 7 generations down the line. I think that's a great teaching for us in this world. You know, we're all stuck giving Twitter feedback. You know, we're all stuck watching CNN and Fox and CBC News. And if we gave our hearts a chance to replenish themselves, we would be able to express all the love that we do have inside us. And it's really up to us as individuals to make that choice to make this a better planet. And we can do it. So please just keep that in mind for a minute. So now I've taken action. So now I'm creating art. So now I get to come and speak to you. And I see that you guys are already taking action. And I'm just so pleased, truly, to be here on this day. I'm going to read you one more piece. And I'm not even sure what kind of time I've had. And I hope I said everything that I wanted to say. I hope I said some things that you wanted to hear. And thank you for taking your action. My role in this for residential schools and for Truth and Reconciliation Day is that, like most Indigenous people, like every Indigenous person that you know, someone has they have a connection somewhere close in their family to residential schools. I was born into a racial no man's land created by colonialism. Some called my circumstance the 60s scoop, where Indigenous children were robbed from their families and placed in white homes off reserves. I roamed amongst the settlers undetected in my rape-colored skin, what is referred to these days as white passing features. The mohawk had been wiped clean from me. I was wearing a disguise that got handed to me while I was too young and unaware to even know that I was wearing it. Decades before, my mother was sent to day residential school where from the age of 6 or 7, she was asked daily to stand up with the other Mohawk children of Ganawage in the classroom and take a good look around at one another. Take a good look, because you're the last Indians that this world is ever going to see. My mother actually believed that she was one of the last Indians on this planet. She told this story on her 80th birthday around a table with me, her son, my kids, her grandchildren, and my grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, as we sat there celebrating her birthday. That's 4 generations of Mohawks sitting around that table. So she was not the last Indian. She was a survivor. And we're all survivors. Through her, we stand as victims of this country's greatest sin. Canada's attempt to kill off the entire Indigenous population of this land is one of the grossest, most inhumane sagas in the history of this planet, and it continues today. We Indians, my mother, my ancestors, have been overcoming hatred at the hands of colonialism for, I don't know, what is it, 600-700 years? So tell me, what is reconciliation supposed to look like? What's it supposed to look like in our new world, in fact? Well, to me, it looks like this today. It looks like me talking to you and eventually you taking action. It's like us being able to have a conversation. That's where the starting point is. The world does not need the word reconciliation. Let's just start that. So let's create a new time when we don't have to use that word. Let's create a world where we don't have to apologize to our grandchildren for the action that we didn't take. Well, there's trouble coming at us, a broken promise from the top. We don't stand for the flags and emblems. We're just claiming what's still ours. Yeah, there's trouble all around us. Police on attack when we get on the Grand River. Oh, mama, we won't look back. Well, they marched us to their churches and they stoned us with their faith. Took our belts and took our language and left our dreams out to waste. Yeah, there's trouble all around us. Police on attack when we get on the Grand River. Oh, mama, we won't look back. Yeah, there's trouble all around us. Police on attack when we get on the Grand River. Oh, mama, we won't look back when we get on the Grand River. Oh, mama, we won't look back. Thank you for listening to me. I often, regardless of how I look, I'm a very busy man. I have a very busy schedule. So I didn't really know fully what I was walking in here today, and I didn't know about your contribution to this movement. So thank you for that. Thank you to this institution. Now, 18-year-old girls do not have to be treated like my mother was treated in 1959. Now, babies like I was can be born into the arms of their mothers. So thank you, St. Joe's. Thank you, BMO. It's very meaningful to me. Thank you. All right. Oh. Where do I go now? On the high chair?
We do have a couple of minutes left. So does anyone have any questions specifically for Tom? Okay, great. I have a question. Here, have a seat, Tom. Okay. So as we hear about your personal journey and your experiences, I guess I'd like to ask you a question. If you look back 10 years ago and didn't know what you know today, what advice would you give to someone having that first conversation in that limo?
Just found out that they're Indigenous.
Yeah.
I think that the guy who directed my film, Shane Belcourt, who is a Métis, whose sister, by the way, is Christy Belcourt, the world-renowned Indigenous artist. He said, you're not becoming Mohawk. You've always been Mohawk. So to be able to, find your way. I mean, it's not, for me. It's not about putting on an Indigenous costume. It's about taking off the costume that colonialism put on me, as I said in one of my readings. That's the important thing, is that we are actually stripping away the bonds of colonialism. And, it's not, there's no, as we know, there's no drive-through answers. It's not like we order our identity at one window and drive around and pick it up on a tray in another window. It's a process that is a different timing for everybody, just like aging or sickness or enlightenment. So I'm 65 years old now. I'm hoping that I have 20 more years for the colors and the language and the land that I'm from to enrich my life even more.
Thank you.
Was that it? Oh, thank God you showed up.
Can you hear me?
No, no, I can hear you. I'll repeat the question.
First, I want to say that as your friend, I just want to tell you your
That's my sexy look.
around creativity and mental health.
Mhm.
Could you just speak to your process and I know your connection to nature has always been part of your own journey, and perhaps has that changed since you understand better your community and
Well, first of all, the creative energy, creative process really has saved me from hundreds of thousands of dollars of therapy. Um, the ability to be able to, as my wife, who's a teacher and she recognized on our first date that I was on the spectrum. So 9 years later, we're still getting along pretty good, knowing that. Being able, she says that I hyper focus. So I do these giant paintings with what I consider obsessive compulsive, some consider incredible detail. But my time after I leave here, I'm heading to Sherman Avenue North to the Cotton Factory to my studio to continue. I have 2 exhibits opening this fall, so that's what I'm going to do. It is my savior. My art is my savior. I'm just going to show you something since I have it. Um, uh, I I advise when I talk about creativity, I advise everybody to indulge themselves in writing or creating. Just the idea of us all creating something that wasn't there yesterday. I mean, how fantastic is that? The thought of that and being able to find your own individual spirit in the work because your work isn't going to be like mine and my work is not going to be like yours, but as individuals we can indulge ourselves and shut out our minds. What I was saying, and I'm as bad as everybody in the room, our phones are killing us. We need time to be able to be alone, away from all those apps. This is a book that they published in my art recently, and I'm very, very pleased with it. Just show a couple pictures. So these are photographs of some paintings I did. I have a painting going into the McMichael Gallery in November. 10-foot one. It's very excited. I'm not really an artist. I just like putting shapes and colors and detail on. I'm also a shitty musician, but I have 6 Juno Awards and a bunch of gold records on the wall. And I'm dyslexic, but I'm writing my second book for Penguin Random House. So you cannot let your limitations get in the way of your creative spirit. Don't let it happen. Take a look at these paintings. I started painting these like this in 1997. About 15 years ago, my daughter said, "Dad, you have to stop painting like this. It's cultural appropriation." I'm a knucklehead from Hamilton. I don't even know what that means. She said, "It's when you take someone else's culture and you use it for your own advantages." I said, "This is just what's coming out of me. And then, of course, 10 years ago, I find out that I'm Mohawk. This is blood memory. This somehow I was lucky enough. I'm not special, well, some would say, but I'm fortunate enough to be able to have the blood memory come out of me. My art was telling me who I was all this time. I wasn't paying attention. So that's like the only magic trick that I have in this world is making art. And like I say, I don't claim to be really good at it, but I just won't stop. Is that it? Question period's done?
question period's done. Painless? Yes. On behalf of all of us, to you, thank you very much.
Thanks. I hope that this was okay. I hope that I didn't take too much of your time. And thank you very much for listening to me. And you can have this. Okay.
this one. Okay, perfect. I just wanted everyone to give Melissa a round of applause. She actually made our heart pins that we're all wearing today. She is a St. Joe's employee and a Haudenosaunee woman as well. She does a lot of art, and she just never gets the appreciation I think she deserves. So thank you, Melissa. She also generously donated some keychains for us today as our door prizes. So if everyone has their tickets they got when they came in, we're gonna just put, if people have left, we're just gonna rapid fire it, and whoever comes up gets them if you're still here. The last three numbers. Do you want to do some? Okay, let's mix it up first. Oh, yeah, okay. All right, everybody ready?
Are they all 148? Yeah, it looks like it.
Okay.
Last four digits, 469. Or sorry, last three digits, 469.
Anybody?
Anybody? No? Okay, next one.
Okay. 468. That's weird. No, okay.
381.
Oh, come on.
Hey,
Whoa, come
mother!
down. We'll keep going while she makes her way up here. 464.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, so that's two winners. Melissa, you
How many
keep
we got?
going. 6. Do you have the colors up there?
382. Hey.
Color preference?
462.
Color
Come
preference?
on, Ash.
Go green. Thank you.
Yeah.
Three more.
Yep. Wait, Ashley's taking us. Two more.
Two more.
That's okay.
362. No.
457.
363.
Oh, someone's coming up.
Yeah.
363, no?
363.
Red
Nobody?
or orange? You're welcome. You got one yet? No? 384.
Okay.
Yay! That's it. Okay, all righty. Quick wrap up. I know everyone's keen to leave, but I literally have 3 points to make. Okay. I'm going to wrap up by saying a huge thank you to all of you and 3 things that we heard Tom say. He said, we all have a job in making this world a better place, and it's a choice to make this planet a better place. He said, let's allow land keepers to take care of the land. And he closed by saying, let's create a world where we don't have to apologize to our grandchildren for the actions we didn't take. So today was about taking action, and it was about finding common ground to do better as a collective. So thank you for doing your part. Thank you to all our partners and people who are here today. Thank you for showing up and taking a step in our intentional journey towards truth and reconciliation. Thank you.